everybody.
Good morning, good morning. Hi, everybody. Good to see some faces. Hope everybody's well. Do pop yourself on mute so we don't have any background noise, if that's okay. And feel free to say hello in the chat to us.
Brilliant. We've got lots of people joining this morning, so we'll just give a minute or so for people to click the link. I hope you're all having a good week. It's nice to see lots of faces. That always helps.
Absolutely.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. So we'll get started. We're just together for 45 minutes this morning. Do say hello to us in the chat. I've just seen Pete pop in there. Hi, Pete. Good to see you there. Okay. So let us know. Let us know where you're dialing in from. It's good to hear from you. If you're finding in the chat that you're getting lots of blue boxes appear, because that's just where your notifications will be piling on top of each other, that could be really frustrating for you today because we're going to be in the chat loads. So do pop onto your Teams app and just change your status to do not disturb, and that will stop those coming in, which will really help. Because what you'll find is as we're in the chat more and more, you'll just be closing down notifications rather than reading what's in there. So that would be good. It's good to see you. Let us know what the weather's like where you are. We had a very long, wet and windy drive back from Manchester yesterday. Luckily, it was a bit drier in the southwest.
Absolutely.
Brilliant
So we've got
stuff.
Steve from Cambridge. Morning, Steve. We've got E from Brisbane. Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Francesca from Bournemouth. Karina from Somerset. Oh, you're just up the road from us, Karina. And Blackpool. Sunny, frosty Blackpool. Oh, lovely. We're going into like proper winter weather now, aren't we? Phil says there's lots of water here in Herefordshire. Yeah, we were kind of driving down the M5 on a very waterlogged M5 yesterday.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Great stuff. Okay, so we're going to get started because it's 9:32, and as you'll know, this is a short, sharp, bite-sized 45-minute session. So the sessions move at pace, but we are recording it, so you'll be able to pick up any points after the session as well by watching the recording back.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, so let's get into it then. Okay. Welcome to Psychological Safety, creating psychological safety for your teams. If we can just move the slides through, Hayley, and we'll get into introductions for those who don't know us yet, although looking at names, we some familiar faces and some folks that are new to Quantum Rise, so that is brilliant. So yeah, 45 minutes today, short, sharp, as Hayley said. So my name's Erica Farmer. I'm the co-founder and business director of Quantum Rise Talent Group. I've got 20 years corporate learning and development experience with some of the UK's largest brands. And we do a lot of work in the apprenticeship space as well. So roles that I've had in the past is head of leadership development, head of L&D, head of apprenticeships. And I also work really closely with both corporates and apprenticeship training providers, supporting on their boards and strategies. And I'm going to hand you back over to Hayley.
Brilliant. Thank you, Erica. So yeah, my name's Hayley Bird. Again, many familiar names and faces, which is nice. So I've worked in education, skills, careers of some description for about 14 years now, but about 10 in corporate learning and development. And my passion really for this way of learning and this virtual facilitation is the flexibility it gives people and the opportunity it gives people to take practical, useful stuff away and apply it. So obviously the session today, we're looking at psychological safety, but it's really nice for us to be able to demo a slightly different method of learning, which hopefully you'll all be able to take at least one thing away from. So we really want to make sure that the next 45 minutes is a really good use of your time and that you all take something away from it. So we'll be asking lots of questions. It'll be really interactive. There'll be loads of opportunities for you to share your thoughts, your ideas, to reflect on some of the things that we're talking about as well. So let's get straight into it. So it would be really useful to understand what's made you sign up for this today. How is today's topic going to support you in your role? So what do you want to get out of the session? So open up the chat box and just pop your thoughts in there, and we can have a little look and reflect back on some of those things and just make sure that we are helping you to meet some of that. So you've probably all had busy mornings already, and it's always good just to drive our thinking a little bit. So tell us how today's topic will support you in your roles. We'll wait for some of those thoughts to come in. Psychological safety, I think, is something that is going to support all of us in all of our roles, not just at work, but probably in our home lives to some extent as well. So let's have a little look at how this can apply for you. Harriet, brilliant stuff. So supporting people through a lot of changes right now and think
Mm.
it'll be helpful. Absolutely, Harriet. So actually applying this to change. And I don't think that's going to go away. You know, we're living in such a changing environment. Things are moving on all the time. There's crisis around us all of the time. There's uncertainty and things that we're dealing with. So I think that's really, really relevant. In January, I'll be managing a brand new team, so I want to help them feel safe. I absolutely love that. So again, thinking about how can I quickly make people feel safe in my team, because I know what the impact of that will be in terms of productivity and relationships in the team as well. Love it. Delivering training to managers. So again, for Ivy, having a little look and seeing if there's any inspirational content here that you might think, actually, I think that will really help my teams and my managers as well. Brilliant stuff. Karina, supporting a team in a remote role. So again, you've got that challenge of remote or hybrid working, which is a different thing again, isn't it? We have to look into different skills maybe and mindsets when it comes to supporting people and making people feel safe at work. So some really great reflections here as well. And again, Pete, there navigating change, lots of efficiencies to deliver in healthcare learning. So with the economic crisis, that's going to be affecting everyone. And if you've been on our previous webinars, there is this underlying current to these modules around change and where we are at the moment. So some brilliant stuff there. So thank you for that. So the why and the reason why, when Erica and I got our heads together not too long ago, we were thinking about what are the real topics at the moment that feel current and relevant for people, where they're going to get the most out of this offering and the time we've got to share this with you. And creating psychologically safe environments just hugely increases productivity, people's opportunities to innovate, to share diverse thoughts and opinions and ideas. And it makes people feel safe, which, and if people feel safe, they'll stay because they know that they're in a good, safe place where their ideas are heard and shared. So it's really important now that as managers, we're providing that environment, and we're providing an environment where people are happy to share ideas, happy to ask questions, to raise any issues that they might have, and actually to make mistakes without fear of that repercussion that something's going to go wrong because they've made a mistake. So just by feeling that way, people's well-being increases massively as well. So we know that this is so important. It's critical for work and the future of work going forward, because the only thing that's going to be constant over the years and in our working futures and those children that are coming up behind us, the only thing that's constant is the fact there's going to be a lot of change to deal with. And we know that that's difficult to manage in organizations as it is. So, to get us thinking about this, and obviously we've given quite a lot of context there anyway, but it'd be really useful to hear in your words what psychological safety is. What does it mean to you? So, again, open up the chat box and let's share some of our thoughts around what do I think psychological safety is? What does it really look like? How would I sum that up in a really short sentence? And just drive your thinking to that word, that term. What does it mean? And let me know in the chat. It's something that we talk about, but it's quite difficult when we think about what does that actually mean? The ability to share without shame, Pete, spot
Mm.
on. Absolutely. So the ability to speak up without that shame or that fear of reprimand. Feeling of trust in support of others around me. So actually being able to trust each other enough to be really honest and to really share, being an honest person, Jeanette, feeling valued. So that feeling that somebody gets back that actually I've shared my thoughts, which might have taken me some time to do, or it might have taken me really out of my comfort zone to share those thoughts. And I can do so and know that my thoughts are safe, that they're valued, appreciated. Love that, Natalie. Being authentic,
Mm.
working productively, just learning from mistakes, moving forward, and just being who you are and being yourself. Absolutely. And there's things that will stop people doing this stuff. So it sounds like common sense, but there's a lot going on in organizations that really hold people back. Authenticity is everything, Erica. Absolutely. And I'm seeing that come through so much in the chat as well. So it's great to know that we're there. Just pop yourself on mute if you've just joined. We've got a little bit of background noise. Brilliant. Thank you. So to sum it up, it's an environment of rewarded vulnerability. And I love this quote because I think it just really summarizes everything that you've said, but in a way that just feels quite simple and direct. So we're rewarding people's vulnerability, and we're going to pick that apart a little bit throughout the session. No worries, Angela, I've just seen your note in there. Don't worry at all. So let's pull this apart a little bit now to start thinking about we know authenticity, we know trust, we know honesty. We've seen all these words starting to come through. But what are the real characteristics? What do those things really truly look like in a team that feels psychologically safe? So I'm just going to launch a poll for you now, and that will come up on the middle of your screen. So you can submit any responses into the box that's come up. You can also respond in the chat as well. The polls come through in the chat, so wherever's easiest for you. Pop some of your thoughts in there on the word cloud and submit those, and it will take a minute for the responses to start to come through. But what characteristics would you notice in a team that feels psychological safe? What do you see from people? What do you hear from people? What do you notice? Feedback, absolutely right. So an environment where feedback is just second nature. It's safe and it's all about productivity, moving things forward. Positive conflict, absolutely. So what does positive conflict look like? What's the characteristic? How do we know that positive conflict is it within that organization? Confidence. We all know what a lack of confidence can do to our skills, our behaviors. Absolutely. Constructive challenge, honesty, support, stress free. And again, some stress is okay because it's okay to feel a level of pressure, because sometimes it's that old saying, give a job to a busy person, isn't it? Some stress is good for productivity, but once you start to tip over the edge or you start to feel less resilient, that's when it can really impact relationships and it can impact productivity. Brilliant stuff. Commitment, vulnerability, that word's coming in there again as well. Inclusive. So some really great collaborative. I'm loving it. So some really great thought and insight in there. And these are the sorts of things that we want to be able to see. And what we're going to use the time today to start to think about is, well, how do we do that? So what's the impact, A, if we get it wrong? Because we know that there is impact to getting this wrong. And also, what do we need to do? What are the practical steps that we can take to start to get it right? And to start to think more consciously, maybe, and be more aware about some of the things that we're doing as managers. So we've got loads of responses in there. So you can press the little cross, which will take the box off the middle of the screen, and that will just close the box away so it's not in your way. But you still will be able to see all the responses and results in the chat and in the polls tab as well, at the top of the screen, so it won't go anywhere. So just to give a bit of a summary around that, psychological safety is an environment where people feel included. They feel part of it. They feel like it's a safe place to learn, to test things, to contribute. But one of the biggest things is that bottom one around, actually, I feel safe to speak up and challenge the norm, challenge what's already in place, challenge the thing that maybe a lot of people in the organization think is working. And that takes a lot of courage. And to be able to do that, we need an environment where people have somewhere to put those thoughts. So with some of that in mind, what I'd like you to do now is take a minute just to reflect on the psychological safety in your team, or if you don't manage a team, within the team that you work or within your organization. And I want you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how psychologically safe you think your team feels. Now, I don't want you just to send this into the chat. And I'm sure we've got a big group, so there will be people that just stick their number in the chat. But think about that on a scale of 1 to 10. And type your answer in the chat, but don't press enter. Just leave it in the box. And once you've written something, give me a hands up so I can see that you've written it.
And I think that's 1 very low, 10 very high.
Brilliant. We've got some hands going up. So type your answer in the chat and give us a hands up once you've typed it, but don't press enter on it just yet. And we'll get a sense around the room then. We've got lots of hands going up, which is great. Brilliant. We'll wait for a few more. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being there's no psychological safety present in my team, 10 being it's really high. Okay, so once you're ready, I can see lots of hands have gone up. Press enter and let's see what we've got. Okay, brilliant. So it's a real range of scores there coming in around.
Mm,
Again, some of the stuff that we've explained at the beginning is obviously just sparking some thought. And it just goes to show what a range. And again, this can be down to perception. You could be making this judgment based on how you feel, not necessarily the team feels, because you might be thinking, actually, I feel really safe in the team. So make sure you reflect as well on not just how I feel within my team, but how I think others feel. 9.5, Ivy, that's nice and high. And thank you so much for sharing those. So keep that in mind, write the number down, make your action at the end of the workshop today be about boosting that score. So what can I do? Whether it's to move it up 1 or zero point 0.5 for you, Ivy, because you had a nice high score there, whether it's moving it up a few marks against that score. But what can I start to do now to increase this? And we're going to share some thoughts with you around that today.
mm.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to pass you over to Erica now, who's going to start picking apart maybe some things that we're hearing at the moment around where psychological safety might not be present.
Absolutely. So, yeah, really interested to get your thoughts. So, some of you might have watched the news over the last couple of weeks, but we'd like you to share in the chat any organisations that come to mind that perhaps aren't displaying these signs that we've been talking about around psychological safety at the moment. Lots of some interesting comments coming into the chat. We've got the Home Office, Twitter, absolutely, Mr. Elon Musk. FIFA is a big one that's in the news, particularly around questions around inclusivity. What might that mean and how does that play in? Conservative Party, we're getting a little bit political now, the
Yeah,
government.
careful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think without kind of going too far into people's politics and opinions on these things, I think there's some good selection there. The one that we've picked out that we want to deep dive with you today is, of course, Twitter. And we've got a very short video that we're going to play just to explain for those who aren't up to date with what's been happening with a little blue bird in Silicon Valley, just to get us all up to speed. It's going to have some volume and some sound, which will play through your headset or your machine when Hayley presses play in just a second.
Now, Elon Musk has told Twitter staff that they must commit to working long hours at high intensity or else leave the company. Workers have been told that they needed to click on a link by Thursday evening if they want to be part of the new Twitter, as he put it. Well, let's go live to Glasgow now. Our technology editor, Zoe Kleiman, is there. Quite a statement, Zoe. What has he got to add? I mean, where's the incentive?
Well, what we know is that Elon Musk is a workaholic. You know, he says by his own admission, he works hundreds of hours. He is very, very dedicated to his job. He said in a recent court case that he works all of the time and he has very high expectations of his staff as well. Let's not forget that after the lockdowns, he was one of the first bosses to order his staff to get back into the office at Tesla, which is his other company. What's kind of interesting, I think, is that he might be looking to China here. China has a working rule which is called 996, and it's basically 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. Now, it's not very popular, as you can probably imagine, and it certainly doesn't really fly in the West, but it is an interesting work ethic. And, you know, China, as we know, has a very, very thriving tech sector. He's expecting a lot. He's saying to people, if you don't want to come along for this ride, we'll give you 3 months severance pay. This is your moment to leave, which is, I suppose, giving people a reasonable way out. But it's a clear sign that working at Twitter is going to be a very different experience, perhaps, to what staff that are still there might have been used to under the previous regime.
Yeah, and I suppose the staff may accept, look, we're losing money, we've got to do something about that. But there could be a lot of people saying, you know what, I'll take the money and I'm out of here. That would cost an awful lot of money.
I think what we need to look at is what happens next with the tech sector. You know, as we're seeing, there's a lot of layoffs going on. There's a lot of unsettled companies. There's a lot of people pulling in their belts at the moment and sort of saying, you know, we need to lay off people. There needs to be less money. But what you've got to bear in mind about Silicon Valley is it is a pool of talent. It is a pool of very, very smart people, and they're not going to sit around doing nothing for very long. And I spoke to somebody recently who lives there and has lived there his whole life, and he said the way to look at it is to look at the coffee shops. Are the coffee shops empty? He says, no, they're not. They're full of people huddled, talking, coming up with new ideas. You know, we might now see a time of big change for the tech giants, but we might also see a time of opportunity for smaller, newer startups to come along.
Zoe, it's one of the great sagas of the moment, isn't it? Thanks very much indeed for bringing us right up to date. Thursday.
Okay, so interesting times. Where's Elon gone wrong? Give us your thoughts in the chat. Yeah, if you've watched the news, there's been a few updates since then. He's been locking people out of offices. He's been closing down accounts. It's kind of my way or the highway. Where's Elon Musk gone wrong from a psychological safety perspective? Obviously, credit to the BBC for that video. Give us your thoughts in the chat. Where's he gone wrong? Has he gone wrong? He doesn't care, Sharon says. Yeah. Jeanette says respect of people and work-life, home-life balance. Yep. There's no trust for existing staff. Angela says not explaining what the hardcore working is. People are prepared to work hard, but not knowing what it means. Absolutely. Dictatorship, no collaboration, employee well-being at the bottom of the agenda. Assuming what works for him works for everybody. And you know what? I think probably, you know, I've certainly been guilty of that as a manager. So that's one of those ones kind of easy to fall into that trap. Obviously quite an extreme situation at Twitter currently. Stamping his feet like a child. He's not listening. He's not spoken to. He's certainly not consulted. And, you know, interestingly, I think working regulations in the States are slightly different compared to Europe. I don't know so much about Australasia, but we're certainly a lot more protected in the UK than our American colleagues are, I think. So not that that's any kind of excuse. Irresponsible role modeling, Pete says. Unclear expectation, Eve says. Yeah, absolutely. So what's the impact of all this then? I know you can say Elon Musk, he's the richest man in the world. He owns SpaceX, he owns Twitter, he owns Tesla. So what? You know, so what? He's not going to care, is he? You know, just move on to the next company, won't he? It doesn't matter. You know, he can do what he wants. He can behave how he wants, can't he? What's the impact? Yeah, Natalie says he's assuming hardcore work ethic equals profit. We know that's not always the case, don't we? Yeah, fear, intimidation, employees won't care, lack of respect. And interestingly, the newscaster was talking about the talent pool in Silicon Valley. And actually, these people, this talent that you want to keep in your organization will have lots of different opportunities, whether to innovate themselves and set something up or join another organization quite quickly. And quality will leave the business, Phil says. Absolutely. Poor reputation, Partoon says. Yeah. Sorry, Karina says. Angela says reputation conflict, no leadership. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, this is quite an extreme case, and we wanted to share this to you because it's quite open and honest. You can see right into Twitter at the moment with what's going on. But we call this really emotionally expensive. This is going to be expensive for Twitter, and it might not feel like it right now, but we can all see what's coming right in the long term. Harriet says when individuals don't take any feedback, they lose track of reality. That's a great point. There's a few examples of that right now, for sure. Absolutely. Could this change working practices around the world? That's an amazing question that Sophie's just asked. If we allow this, what else becomes acceptable? Fear shuts us down, and there is that decision of, do you make the decision to stay if that's happening in your organization, or something's happening that you don't like, or do you take your talent elsewhere where you will be valued and you will feel psychologically safe and you can innovate and you can make mistakes without fear of reprimands? Because if we do all that, we're more likely to get continuous improvement and new ideas and fresh thinking and reaching our potential. Whereas with Twitter, nobody's going to reach their potential if the way that he carries on keeps going on. Yeah, Natalie says, I love the term emotionally expensive. Very emotionally expensive, that kind of behavior, isn't it? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so that's when it goes wrong. Let's have a think about, what do we see from others when we get it right, whether leaders get it right, whether we get it right? What do we see that impact being? So Hayley's going to launch the annotation tool on Teams. This is where we type on the whiteboard. So just give us your thoughts. If you can't access the annotation tool, that's completely fine. Just put your thoughts in the chat. But be really specific around the behaviours and the language that you see from good leaders, great organisations, when we see this go good. So you just want to click on the little T on the toolbar that's appeared on the top. You can see where the little blue spots have started. That's somebody typing away on the whiteboard there. Again, if you can't access it for whatever reason, just give us your thoughts in the chat. But what might you see? And try and be really specific in those behaviours. Try and pinpoint, what does that mean? So if we're talking about innovation, collaboration, that's great. So that's an overall header. What do we actually see from leaders doing a really good job here? What might we see from their behaviours, their language? What else might we see in the culture of the organisation? Loyalty, absolutely. Creativity, celebration, absolutely. What else? Welcoming feedback, Harriet. Love that. Yeah, I want to listen. I want you to be really honest and authentic. And feedback is a gift. I'm here to listen to what you have to say, not just pay lip service to it. Initiative, engagement, positive conversations. And a positive conversation, by the way, doesn't have to be soft and fluffy and lovely. It can be quite challenging. Like, it really kind of bubble to the surface, having that open and honesty and feeling okay with that. Trusting their people, Angela says, absolutely. When leaders are vulnerable, people feel like they can be too. And we'll explore vulnerability a little bit more in a minute. That's a great point. Loyalties come up again. Recognition, openness, connection with people and customers. Because if you treat your people right, your people are going to treat your clients and your customers right. We know that that works. For sure, but it's so easy to destroy, isn't it? You've got to be really on your game, really mindful, really self-aware as managers and leaders of what this means. Stretch you out of your comfort zone, but in a positive way. Absolutely. And you know what? This is also about, if you as a leader, if you make a mistake, that's okay. Be open, be honest, share that, tell the story around that so others can learn from your mistake. But also kind of share your soul a little bit so people get to know who you really are. That's how you build a lot of psychological safety. We're people to people, we're not employee to employee. Angela says business improvement with others, absolutely. Not just the leader running with it, but team members. That's when you start to see that ripple effect, isn't it? Brilliant, I love that. Constant learning through challenging, reassurance, valued conversations, absolutely. Mutual respect. So we got really positive language, we're authentic, we're open, we can raise conflict in a really positive way. We thank people for trying something different. We give feedback as part of the normal conversation. We receive feedback as part of the normal conversation. It doesn't become this thing that we get defensive to. Some really great stuff that you guys are popping on the screen here. I love this. I love the way that this is positioned, and I think there's some really good stuff. And just have a think about, what does that mean for me as a leader or me as a team member? What kind of language do I use, and how am I contributing to psychological safety in my organisation? And I'll hand you back over to Hayley.
Brilliant, Erica. Thank you. Just before we move on, Erica, just take a snip of the screen.
Yeah.
And then we can, just before, because in a minute I have to delete them all, and I hate doing that because we get some great thoughts. But we'll take a quick capture of the screen and then pop it into chat for you, so you can keep it. It will be in the chat of the meeting. You can also download it. You can click on it and download it from the chat as well. So we'll keep that, because I think there's some really great thought and insight there. In terms of what we're going to really see from people. So I'm going to clear the annotations now, but you can see we've captured those in the chat, so they won't go missing. And I'm just going to turn the annotation tool off so it's not in the way on the screen. But thank you so much for your contributions. So bearing in mind the scores that we gave at the beginning, thinking about all the things we've talked about, the very extreme Twitter case study, reflect on an action now and just take a minute to do that. And feel you can share it if you like in the chat. Equally, you can just write it down in front of you. But just take a minute now to reflect on an action at this point to increase that level of psychological safety. What one thing can I do? What one thing can I start to implement in my teams, whatever it might be? But just reflect for a minute on an action that you might be able to take, something within your control, within your influence, to really increase. Even if the psychological safety score is really high, how can I move it on even further? Because we know the impact of getting this right on us, on the well-being of our teams and on the business. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And then I'm going to share with you some tips. If you can't quite think of anything, I'm also going to share with you some thoughts now that you might want to implement into that action plan. Okay. So the first thing is solicit criticism. So what do we mean by that? It's basically going out there and looking for things that you can take and change and getting feedback from your teams for things that actually they're not that happy about. So going out there and asking for it is again showing that you're brave enough and vulnerable enough to go out and ask for feedback on things. Phil's put be curious. Francesca's put address it when someone is being judgmental and encourage curiosity again and understanding. Seek to understand. Ask questions to understand as opposed to ask questions to just respond to what they're saying. And I think we may all have heard of that saying recently or before, but I think it's so important and something that we easily forget because our natural instinct isn't going to be to go out there and ask people for criticism or to go out there and seek understanding of challenges. So I think that's a really key one to think about. Don't sit in the echo chamber, Phil. Love that. Open questions and truly listen. Good old questioning comes back again as being one of the absolute core skills around so many things in business, and we know that. So, talking about questions, what questions, so be specific now, what questions could you ask to solicit criticism in your teams? So think about those open questions. And we've mentioned open questions. Jeanette, you said that in the chat. What open questions could you ask to solicit criticism in your team? What else, Pete? What else can I do? What else can the team do? What else can the business do? Love it. What else? What else? What questions could you ask to solicit? How do you feel about? Yes, definitely. How do you feel about this? Let's bring people in. How are we doing right now, Phil? Even deeper and even more uncomfortable, maybe. How am I doing right now? Make it about me as the leader. What can I do? How do you find the work? Processes we ask you to follow. Again, I ask you, what can I do differently as the manager or the leader? What do you need, Jeanette? So some great suggestions. What really matters, Pete? Yeah, what's really going on here? What really matters? And am I meeting that for you as a leader? What examples can you think of where you would have liked to be different? Love that, Francesca. So get into detail. Give me an example or a time when it happened, and also explain to me what the impact of that was. So when this happened, how did that affect you or the team or the business? Love it. What else can I do, Erica? Do I give you what you need in your role, Angela? Or open it up even more? What more can I give you that you might need in your role? So try those, remember those open questions. Because if you say that to somebody, do I? That's where if somebody doesn't feel particularly psychologically safe, they'll just say yes. Yes, you do. So really opening it up. What needs to change? So there's a couple of suggestions. There's so many in the chat already. So, you'll be able to have this chat to take away, but make a note of some really core questions that you might want to think about. And there's some suggestions here. What could I do or stop doing that would make it easier to work with me? That's quite a pokey question. And it might be uncomfortable to hear the answer, but the impact of asking it in terms of the conversation that you might open in your team could have a great, huge impact. Stop, start, continue, Erica's put. What's working and what could I do better? So not just focusing on the criticism, but actually what do we not want to get rid of? And Pete mentioned this with what else? What else is there? What could I be doing more of? What could I be doing better? So some great suggestions in there. And when you ask the question, listen to the response. What might stop us listening when we ask a question like that? Let me know in the chat. What might stop us from listening to the response when we ask a question like that? Pride, Josie. Yeah, absolutely. Fear, ego. If I ask this question, I'm opening a can of worms. Am I really ready to listen to the answer? And then that's where that defensive mindset might kick in. So it's not just about the question we ask, it's the authenticity, the curiosity, the vulnerability of asking that question.
And
Brilliant.
don't just ask it for the sake of asking it, because people will smell that a mile off.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when they've seen a psychological safety workshop in your calendar this morning. Absolutely. Again, it goes back to that authenticity, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So Alongside this, sometimes, and this will depend a lot on your natural preference. So this will depend on, you might naturally give praise very readily, or you might sometimes fault find more often. So this is again about raising awareness of your preference. Do I give praise? Do I give too much praise to the point where the praise starts to lose validity? Or do I always go to criticism? So challenge yourself in your own mindset and approach here. And soliciting that feedback is really just the first step, because we also need to make sure that we're role modeling that giving praise and giving people opportunity to feel good about what they've done. And especially if you notice they've really stepped out of their comfort zone or they've made a mistake, still give praise for trying something new or find that positive in there. And that will really make a big difference. It will make it less threatening for people.
And don't be that manager, and I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely had a manager who did this, who bigs you up to everybody else, but doesn't give the person themselves the praise because they might feel a bit awkward about it, but they're happy talking to other people, and you end up getting that second-hand praise from a colleague or another manager. Oh yeah, I was talking to so and so, and she was telling me you did such a good job on this project, and the way that you handled that stakeholder. Oh right, okay, that's like the first time I've heard that, which is great to hear. But I wish I'd heard it from my manager rather than round the houses. So it's those kind of things, and that manager probably felt she was giving me praise, but it's just those kind of things have just been really clear on what those impacts are.
Definitely. And just on that as well, I wonder what stops us giving praise as managers and leaders. What stops people giving praise for maybe somebody making a mistake? So if a team member's made a mistake, what stops us giving praise for actually stepping out and trying something new? And it could be fear that it makes it okay to make mistakes in my organization or in my team. So there's something to think about there as well. So the other side of that is give the criticism. You need to let people know when they're making a mistake, because if we don't let people know when they're making a mistake, how are they ever going to be able to fix it? Exactly, Jeanette. We learn from our mistakes. So encourage mistakes and encourage that positive criticism and positive pick people up on those things, because then that's how people grow. That's how people improve. So thinking about and understanding how to give really candid criticism is again a real benefit and of making people feel that actually I can go out and make that mistake. We'll have a really open conversation about it. I can learn from it and then we can move on. Angela's put in there, being honest when mistakes have been made must be encouraged. Absolutely. You need to have a way forward, Josie. So again, it's about making a way forward, making a plan forward, making sure that people feel an appropriate level of support and challenge. So I feel really challenged with this, but I know that I'm also being supported to overcome it. So many great things coming in here.
And again, just make it part of the conversation. The more you do it, the more it's just going to feel that it won't be in the box of feedback or criticism or this or that. It's just how you have a relationship with each other and how you work together. And it's just part of the day-to-day conversation.
Absolutely. And actually, if I make a mistake, own up to it. It actually feels quite comfortable once you get used to it and get into that space to stand up and say, I made a mistake. Again, what stops us owning up to our own mistakes? And not just us or you, but I mean people around us, people in our organization. What's the thing that stops people from putting their hands up and saying, I made a mistake? What stops people from doing that? Let me know in chat. Fear again. So we come back to that fear, that ego, all of that stuff that's sitting under the surface, which is really holding us back. Repercussions, Eve. Yeah, absolutely. So again, as a leader, I might not feel psychologically safe to own up to this because there might be some repercussion. Mistakes are made. What we do as a result of the mistake is learn, encourage, improve practices. Conflict, Sam, is a different one again. That blame culture. So all of these things sit under the surface and stop us from doing that. However, if we get it right and we can start to stand up and own up to our own mistakes, what's the impact of that? What's the impact of actually being able to put our hands up when we've made a mistake within our work or anywhere? How is that going to help us? We're leading by example, Francesca. Others are likely to feel that it's okay. People feel safe to do the same, Natalie. Absolutely. We can fail happy and grow. Now, obviously, there's risks to mistakes being made, isn't there? So we have to manage that, and we have to support people. But through not allowing those mistakes to happen, we're not going to be able to enable our teams to grow with us and to diversify and to get all that great talent and thought from everybody. It shows that we're humans, Sam. Exactly. So important. Again, it's another change into the future world of work, isn't it? We're humanizing people. And it all comes down to vulnerability. Today's leaders need vulnerability, not bravado. And I love this quote by Amy Edmondson. It's about being vulnerable and being okay with that. And that's a big mindset shift for people. But hopefully we've given you some really useful kind of tips and practical stuff just to start reflecting on and thinking about throughout this session. It's a comfortable environment, to be honest. Better to be told about a problem than to discover it. Love it, Sophie. Okay, so it's 10 past 10. So the time really does fly, and I appreciate it's been a bite-sized short session for you today, but I really hope that you've enjoyed that and got something from it. It would be good for now just to take a minute or so to really reflect on what we've talked about today. And what's your biggest learn? What are you going to what's the one thing? I said to you at the beginning, when you leave here, we want to be able to walk away with one thing at least, so that this 45 minutes has been a useful use of time for you. So what's been your biggest learn? What can you take away? What can you action? What's the practical piece? Let me know in the chat. And Erica's popped Amy Edmondson's TED Talk in the chat as well, which is great.
I'm just going to pop her TED Talk on psychological safety in there as well, because it's brilliant.
Fab.
There we go.
Brilliant. Yeah, Eve, some simple questions, encouraging honest conversations, opening the channel of feedback more, Jeanette. Love that. Making more of a conscious effort around it, isn't it? Because we're so caught up in the day to day that this is a conscious thing for us to start thinking about, showing that vulnerability. Search for a critic. Love it, Pete. One that I wouldn't usually bring in.
Nice.
Go out and look for diversity, look for a different viewpoint, and don't be afraid of that.
It's like it's a social media algorithm, isn't it? We train our algorithms to tell us what we are searching for. We don't train our algorithms on social media to go and see the opposite side of the coin.
It's quite scary, that, isn't it? We talk about that quite a lot, especially with young minds. Absolutely. Yeah, and also we often bring people in that we get on with, that we've got the same opinion of, because it's quicker and we get on with them and we enjoy it and we're energized by it, because they're energized by all the things we're energized by. So there's a big blind spot there, I think, that's definitely worth exploring. Being more curious, opening those channel fields put in there as well, seeking criticism to show vulnerability, Emma, so going out and asking for it. Brilliant. Okay, so keep those thoughts coming, and I hope that we've given you a reflective start to the day today. We've also got two more, so this is the last two modules of our Building a Modern Management Toolkit. We've got Manager as Coach, which is scheduled in for the 7th of December. We've also got Inclusive Management for the 12th of December, so they're quite soon. We've already run a few of our modules, and I know we've seen some returners, so it's good to see some familiar names and faces. But feel free to sign up to the next workshops. Erica's popped the links into the chat for you there, so that you can click on those and book straight on if you want to join us for more 45-minute sessions. I hope you found it useful. Do let us know if you've got any feedback or any thoughts or comments that you'd like to make before you leave. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you so much. Is there anything else from you, Erica? Any builds at all?
If you haven't had a chance to watch the previous sessions, because you didn't attend, you've not had the recording, I've just put the link to our YouTube channel as well. So they're all up on there for you to go and have a look if you want to as well.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.